The GMTK Jam of 2024 is officially over. All the ratings are in. Mark picked his favorite 20 games. I'd like to celebrate a few more games that I enjoyed playing during the Jam, but they didn't even make top 100. So, in no particular order, here are 10 hidden gems of GMTK Jam. Basic scaling puzzles. This is a puzzle game inspired by Quake. You select special rune blocks and scale them in the direction that you're moving. This creates some interesting puzzles based on the available space and line of sight with the rune blocks. This is honestly a Portal tier puzzle mechanic. There is a lot of potential here. What's not exactly Portal tier is the tutorial. There isn't one, and there is a chance you stumble into the most difficult level before you get used to the mechanics, which might be what drove some people away and why this game didn't make top 100. I think this could make a great full-on puzzle game. It just needs to teach the mechanics a little better. Color Factory. I love factory games. So this is a special jam game for me. At first glance, it looks a lot like Shapes, but Color Factory has a really fresh spin on the genre. See this 3x3 grid? This is all the space you get for the entirety of the game. When you need more space, you put down a smaller 3x3 grid and you zoom in. Need even more space? You can go even deeper in. If you enjoy factory games, I'm sure you'll enjoy this. Now, one of the most influential indie games released this year was Balatro, which has a really strong gameplay loop. Play around, try to get enough points to beat the score, then go to the shop and try to improve your setup to get even more points. Just a really great deck builder, which leads me to the next game. Omelet You Cook. This is a deck builder with omelette ingredients. Each ingredient does something interesting. For example, a bell pepper gets bonus points for every adjacent meat. A cheese gets points for every other cheese. A sausage gets points for every vegetable touching. This goes on and on. You get more foods, and you try to beat an ever-increasing score. This is a game where I can forget myself playing. It really nails a strong gameplay loop, just like Balatro. And there's a lot of ideas with the different food types. Some foods have negative scores, or the wrench, which you need to get off the conveyor in order to not lose points. This is just a great game. Mini Kingdom. This game is also inspired by Balatro, and it's even more apparent. This is a tile placement game. At the end of each round, all the different landscape features you connected together this turn are going to score. Each tile has a score, all those scores get added up, and then multiplied by the amount of stars across the entire field of landscape features. Which works the same way as chips and mold work in Balatro. Then you have a shop where you can buy more tiles, making this a deck builder. I think a full game of this has so much potential for replay value. It needs some balance and more things you could get in the shop. For example, there's no way of removing tiles from your deck you don't want anymore. I would also like to see some more juice when you score. What is here so far is really solid, and the full game could be just as hard to put down as Balatro. Really Long Arms is a physics game about climbing. This reminds one of Getting Over It, but it's not that difficult. While you get used to the mechanics, you do get that same feeling as Getting Over It. At first you kinda stumble, grab with one hand, try to reach with the other hand. By the end you're swinging and jumping, and you realize you don't even need to use that second hand. It feels really skillful once you get to grips with it. Flying around and keeping your momentum is super satisfying. My only critique is that you can get away with only using one hand. I think it would benefit from some mechanics where you absolutely need that second hand as well. Flesje. Similar to Really Long Arms, this is a game about physics and awkward controls. Also not quite a rage game like Getting Over It either, but it's quite difficult to get the controls to work out for you. You control a grapple using only your mouse, and you carefully try to position the different components, trying to put together a bigger construction. Such an unique take on the theme, honestly. I can't think of another game where you're building a model ship in a bottle. That's just super creative. I am, however, super annoyed at the snow globe level. The snowballs just keep rolling off. Artographer. A brilliant puzzle game set in a surreal world. This game reminds me of Return of the Obra Dinn. You have open-ended puzzles in the same way as Obra Dinn, and if you get them right, the game confirms that for you. There's too many possibilities to guess, so you really have to understand the puzzles and engage with them. You know you have a good puzzles on your hand if it makes you want to get the pen and paper out. In fact, it would be really helpful if you could draw on the map that the game gives you. There's quite a lot of puzzle here for a jam game, and you should give this one a play. Build to scales. This is a game about trading. Place your items on the scales and give the customers a fair trade. Between rounds, you can use some items to give upgrades to your scale, like giving bonus points based on specific items in your inventory. And you get two different scales you can swap between depending on the current customer. Every round, the prices for the items get the multiplier, so it really forces you to make use of those upgrades that you put on the scales. Overall, a cute game with a lot of potential. Game Maker's Canvas. It is not shocking that this particular game did not make top 100. This one is not exactly original. It is a clone of Reddit's Place subreddit, but I enjoyed interacting with it over the rating period, and a lot of other jammers were doing that as well. I think a game where you interact with other players in real time is a really unique thing to do for a game jam, and that's why I wanted to highlight this one. Especially funny was Mark's face and how it kept getting tweaked in a ridiculous way over time. I would love to see a time lapse of the entire thing over the rating period. Scale it down. This game was super on point with the theme. You draw a scaled down model of a given image, and you get scored based on how close you got. Now, this is very similar to an actual winner, Nearest Neighbor, but what makes this game more special is the levels where you're working with 3D models. I can't say I've played a game about sculpting before, and it's just really neat. And that was 10 games. As a bonus round, here's what I did for the game jam. Blob Blobington is a platformer where you play as a blob of paint. I think this idea has a lot of potential, like making you shrink to fit gaps, making a trail of paint that is safe for you to return later. But I gotta admit, the character controller ended up a bit janky, which made the precision platforming not feel good. Also, the level design could have explored those ideas better too. I think the idea was brilliant, while my execution of it was only okay, which is a really good lesson for a game jam. Execution matters just as much, if not more, than the idea itself. That's it from me. Thanks, Mark, for hosting the jam, and thank you for watching.